Welcome back, folks. This is House Corrections and Institutions Committee. It is Thursday, April 17th, and we have shifted gears to another issue. This is House Bill 349, which deals with establishing a Vermont State Building Security Board. We have heard from the sponsor of the bill. And we want to give time to the Commissioner of BGS to talk about this, as well as we have folks from the judiciary as well. The court administrator is also here.
Yes.
And also some other folks from the judicial branch. So let's start with the commissioner.
So,
Are you
Madam,
ready or not?
Madam Chair, for the record, Wanda Manoli, Commissioner of Buildings and General Services. My deputy and my director lead. We have done an overview of the existing program. And I think Emily will be talking about, we at this point have not done specific comments on the bill. And I think we'd like to have this conversation with you first. So I'm turning it over.
That's to let us know in terms of what your current system is.
Correct.
Okay? So Emily, you coming up? My goodness, now you're gonna be in the hot seat. That will be an experience, right?
And then we'll put Bill in the hot.
Then we'll put Bill in. Welcome, Emily, and if you could just identify yourself for the record.
Morning, Emily Kasigi, Deputy Commissioner of Buildings and General Services for the record. I'll be very brief before turning it over to Director McSallis, who is truly the expert on his program. But just to start, as the Commissioner alluded to, we're here today to talk about our current system, to provide an overview of how our security function currently works. And I'll just share that, coming back to BGS in December, I've been so impressed at how the program has grown and changed in the 10 years, that I was away from BGS. Previously you thought of it more as your traditional security guards, mostly around the Capitol complex. And it's morphed into something really comprehensive and very impressive, and something I think we can be proud of. And so I, again, was surprised to learn how much that division actually does. And so, again, hoping to provide an overview of all it is that Bill and his team do. So just to start, reference to our statutory authority, I'm not going to read it, but under section 171 to 172 in Title 29, to paraphrase, the commissioner is responsible for security of state facilities, with some notable exceptions, including, the building that we're in and our partners at the judiciary. The mission statement for the Office of Safety and Security, I wanted to just walk through this because it really guides their work and our operations regarding security as a whole in BGS. And so the mission is to develop, coordinate, implement, and evaluate safety and security programs and related training in cooperation with all state organizations in support of the state's efforts to ensure and maintain a safe and secure environment for all employees and visitors. And so that, that is a mission statement that we live and breathe. I want to emphasize that it's to maintain a safe and secure environment for the employees and visitors. So it's really people-centered. The focus is not maintaining safety of state buildings, which is of course important and something that we do as well, but we're really focused on making sure that our employees for the state and people that do business in our offices or are on state property are safe. And so, that's the primary focus and mission of the group. And then just quickly, again, the different sections, and after this slide, I'm going to turn it over to Director McSallis. But this, again, when I spoke about being surprised at how much we do in BGS regarding safety and security, we have, uniform services. So that's the traditional security guard function that I mentioned. We also do emergency procedure planning, threat mitigation, security systems in the state facilities, and then environmental and occupational safety. So, Bill has a team of about 20 that he works with to carry all of this out. And as he walks through the slides, he includes some metrics just about the volume of work that they do and the people that they touch. And again, I find it impressive, and just also want to share that while we're providing an overview of the program rather than responding directly to the bill, which we're happy to come back and do if you'd like us to. I just wanted to share that we're always open to feedback at BGS. So if there are areas, that the bill is trying to address that we can incorporate into our existing program, we're always open to that conversation. So I'm just putting that out there that we, always welcome feedback. And if there are areas where we can build upon our existing successes, we'd love to do that.
I think it's important if we do decide to work on the bill, I think it's important to know and understand what's currently in place.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the focus of the proposed legislation is really looking at the safety of the people. And that may be the issue that we need to work and get testimony on to really see how your security operations really are there for the people, not just always the building, because we know it needs to be the building as well, but what practices are in place to protect the folks who are coming and going, the public as well as the employees that are coming and going out of our buildings.
And hopes,
Been the concern.
yeah. Now, hopefully this will help address some of those questions. So if it's okay, I'll turn it over to Director McSallis.
But do a switcheroo here.
I could turn around a little bit. Oh, actually, yeah, if you could provide me the handout, that would be great. So my name is Bill McSallis. I've been the director of BGS Office of Safety and Security for 6 years, and I'm really happy to be here. So thank you so much for having me. This is who we are, right? So if you wouldn't mind hitting the slide and going forward one. So our uniformed services, like the deputy director said, our deputy commissioner said, are traditional people that would meet you in a state office. We're going to do visitor screening and access control. That's our primary function. If you've been to 109, you've met Ron. He's one of our most friendly and capable officers, and he gets it done. So Ron is there meeting people, trying to determine where you're going to go, what services you may need. Do you need any help getting your equipment or to where you're going? We also do enforcement of parking and towing. So you'll see our officers patrolling the parking lots and each building at least twice a day. I'd like to go into different buildings and just find a reason to talk to people inside. It doesn't have to be a particular person, but I instruct all the officers, like, I want you to go into a building and find somebody that you could strike a conversation with and get to know them a little bit. Because so many times, if you get to know somebody, they'll provide you information that maybe doesn't reach quite the level of an SSIR or an official report. But when you kind of develop a relationship, then they'll say, something was a little odd today. I noticed this car and I wouldn't normally tell you, but since you're in here talking to me, let me tell you what's going on. So I encourage my people to develop those relationships. We monitor events, particularly on the State House lawn, both in person and with security cameras. Anytime we have a contentious event or something where I think security may be concerned, I either do it directly or I ask my staff to find the person who is more or less in charge of that event, let them know exactly how to get a hold of us. Of course, in a true emergency, they can call 911, but the same number that you have on the back of your badges, this 828-0777, is a 24-hour hotline. They can get us. So I always make sure that anybody who is in charge of an event on the lawn knows how to get us so we can help them facilitate whatever they need, or if they have concerns or whatever that may be. We respond to security concerns and medical events. We provide escorts as requested, and occasionally we do. We also have contract security at those locations: Brattleboro, Burlington, St. Albans, and Williston. That's provided by Securitas, which is a contract. It's good.
So is that at our state office buildings there in Bratt and Burlington?
Yes, yes.
And if you provide escorts as requested, is that escorts from a state employee coming into work in the morning or afternoon and they feel they're working in a dicey situation and they feel that they are vulnerable?
It could be that, but you know, there are lots of people who have domestic issues at home. Partners are not getting along. They're afraid that their domestic partner is going to mess with them somehow in the parking lot, or maybe has said some nasty stuff to them. So we may just escort that person back and forth to their car, even though there's no other obvious security concern, but they have the concern. So we want to make sure that they feel better about it.
Sure.
And I just want
Identify.
to add, Wanda Manoli, Commissioner, I want to add to that, I've had direct experience with security and even with my employees in that situation where there may be a domestic or something else going on. We work with the department, we work with the agency, we've actually placed them in other secure spaces. So there's a very protective, clear protocol and process that Bill and his team use. And I, even at DMV, worked with Bill in this role and for the Agency of Transportation. And it's managed extremely well without getting into specific cases or people. And I also think the other piece I just want to pull out, Bill's not giving himself or his team credit enough, the response to security concerns and medical events. It doesn't matter if our team's here in Montpelier, if there's a medical event in Springfield, which we just had a couple of weeks ago. Bill utilizes cameras, they utilize, we are observing, we are point of contact, we are connecting with local, with medical. It's very integrated to what Emily was saying. It's really grown quite well. We probably Bill's team does an enormous amount on that bullet that talks about security concerns, medical events.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, like it's really, I wish you could see our team jump into action when something happens like that. So just the other week, we got a call in Springfield that there was a person who was suffering some kind of medical event. They're on the ground and
Was it a state employee? Or
no, it was a visitor to the
Customer.
building. And it looks as if this person was suffering a cardiac event, fell on the floor and like kind of led with their chin. So there was blood and all kinds of stuff. So as soon as we were made aware of it, we brought up the cameras. We call our people that we know are in the building working our emergency procedure planning. We decide that we're going to issue an SOV alert to give awareness to everybody in the building what to do.
State office building, SOB?
Yeah, SOV, right. Sorry. I should have said that, but thank you for saving me. State of Vermont alerts.
State of Vermont, okay.
Yeah, SOV.
It goes
alert.
broad.
Yes. And so we're watching the event take place on cameras. We're calling people there that are on the scene. We're making sure that appropriate notification is given to the different folks. And everyone has a kind of a job to do. So some of the team is watching on the cameras. Other people are calling the local law enforcement to try to figure out, do they need any more help? Other people are dealing with people in the building. And as soon as it was over, we went down the next day to conduct an after action review. And it was important to look at like what our strengths and weaknesses were. But I have to tell you, we did that truly a few days later. We really went down the next day to just make sure everyone, like I say, is feeling the love. We wanted to make sure that they just felt like we were hearing them, let them talk about some of the issues that they had and give them a voice. And we have now a new therapy dog program. So we got some therapy dogs to go down there and folks could pet a dog while they're, talking about this event. And then a couple of days later, we really dug deep into exactly what the strengths and weaknesses were. But that's all happening. So you're right. We have a medical event, but there's 13 people working it over 3 days.
So was it the team that was working it, or was it also debriefing with the state employees?
Debriefing with the state employees. And as a matter of fact, I'm about to go to the next thing. If you hit the next slide.
Are your uniform folks trained in medical, like CPR and
everyone in my unit is trained in CPR and stop the bleed.
Okay.
But that's one of the requirements for our security officers. They must be trained.
Okay.
But we provide that training to everyone. A couple of years ago, we didn't provide that training at all, and now we do. And we provide. There's a slide. I'll get to it in just a second. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. But so the emergency procedure planning, what is this? It's all the different things that may happen in a building that are going to provide trouble for the employee. So it could be a flood, a fire, a significant medical event. It could be noxious fumes. It could be a bomb threat. So what do we do there? So we have a basic plan. And many of those plans involve eventually evacuating the building, but we want to do it in an orderly fashion. We want to make sure that we have an understanding of where everyone is. Communication, it seems like, is always the downfall in any one of these kind of events. So we practice the communication. What we did a few years ago is that we were trying to make sure that we provided EPP training to approximately the 130 or so main BGS buildings. And we were having difficulty when I first got here. And it was taking 2 and 3 years just to get everybody the training they need. And of course, COVID reared its ugly head. Now we are doing not only forming a safety committee of concerned employees, training them as to what kind of a plan they need, exercising it, drilling it, evaluating it. But we're doing it so frequently that sometimes we even understand that, like, we got to come up with some additional training to make it more exciting because we're doing it so frequently. So we're almost a victim of our own success. One of the things that we do is, to start with, we call everybody from the building that's interested in security and safety and security together. And we've talked to them because a lot of people are coming and going and things, people are teleworking or they've moved. So we just want to see on our first meeting, who's still here from last time, who's new. One of the things that we found, particularly after COVID, was that the people that we assigned are both as safety wardens and our emergency coordinating manager, like the main person in charge. So many of those people were teleworking or weren't in the building regularly. So we decided to provide that training to everyone. So every single person gets trained as if they could be the person in charge that day, because they very well might be. So we trained everyone as if they could be in charge. And then we do a tabletop exercise where we just discuss the different things that might happen. And we try to do it in real time. So we ask some questions. What might you do if this happened? And it's a way of going through a lot of data without actually physically having to go through the motions. And then we have a drill, excuse me.
No, that's fine.
Then we have a drill. And we evacuate the building. We've trained approximately 2,500 state employees in 175 EPP training sessions.
She's getting you some water.
Okay. We also realized that we now teach CPR and stop the bleed. One of the things we found was that there are certain, you know, wonderful, thank you. I have a recall in my mouth right now.
Oh, well, never mind.
This is good. But what we found is by teaching CPR and stop the bleed to as many state employees as we can, they feel empowered to control their own destiny in an emergency situation. So you'd think, well, with noxious fumes, how does knowing CPR really help you? But it really does help those people understand that they can control like their own destiny. And so we like to provide that training, and we do. In addition to CPR and stop the bleed, we also do a variety of other trainings. That's going to be on the next slide, but we do de-escalation and active threat and other other trainings as well. The, oops.
Oh, go ahead.
No, you guys have your own EPP plan. Ours may differ a little bit, so I don't want, like, I love the Capitol Police, but I don't necessarily want you to think that it's just precisely the same as what you guys have. You guys have your own. Ours may differ a little bit, but we use a very similar template. Thank you so much.
So I think a member has a question here. Kevin, did you have something?
Well, sounds like a lot of great training. Is there a lead person physically at each site? It's a stupid question.
No, it's not a stupid question. What we do is in every building, we form a safety committee.
Yes, I hear the committee.
And the committee is composed of safety wardens, and that's generally based upon how the building is laid out. But a safety warden may cover one floor or a couple offices. It really just depends. So let's say the safety warden covers 5 to 10 people that are in close proximity. Any one building may have between 5 and 10 safety wardens. And then we're going to have an ECM, an emergency coordinating manager that all those safety wardens report to, and we'll have a backup. But because, like I said, so many people are teleworking or doing something else that they may not be in the building, we train everybody to be the emergency coordinating manager, but there is one assigned to every building.
But they may be teleworking.
Yes,
Well, I think that's why we have more than one
correct.
and everyone's trained. And so anyone can step in if the alarm system goes off. I think
Yes.
yesterday you saw half of BGS in this building.
Yes, because the alarm went off.
That is an example of the program that Bill's talking about.
We also were able to get external defibrillators, AEDs. There was several years ago, there was we recognized the need to provide AEDs, and we were able to get several dozen, and we're continuing to deploy them throughout buildings in Vermont. I think so far we've deployed maybe 60 in the last 2 years. And you can see the other equipment. There's a bleeding control kit and some other things there in the picture. All right, so the next one is threat mitigation. So we realized that there are a lot of disgruntled clients that come to state offices. Many of them are related to AHS and the Department of Labor. So when someone's getting their child taken away from them, if they come seeking a benefit and they're denied, if they're looking for a job and they're feeling frustrated because they can't get that job, it's not uncommon for someone to say something like, I'm going to come down there and kill you. We get, I'm going to come down there and kill you between 70 and 100 times a year. And then we have to decide, well, how serious is that? So we have this threat mitigation team, and we try to determine just that. How serious is the threat? How specific? We have different criteria that we look at. And then depending upon how serious we think the threat is, we may choose to put the building in what we call visitor screening status so that the building could operate in the way it normally does, but basically the front door is locked and you got to be let in by someone. So we screen our visitors before coming in. If we know the identity of the person who made the threat, then we'll put out a little bolo, a be on the lookout. So it's a piece of paper with the person's photograph and information about like maybe what kind of car they drive and what the nature of the threat is. And we'll provide that to a security officer who's going to be at the front door. But we only have security officers at so many buildings. So what do? Well, occasionally we'll take one of our BGS security officers and we'll temporarily repost them at a building that we normally don't have security at. Or we have contracts with the sheriffs, and I will get a local sheriff to provide security at that building, and they'll be screening the visitors. So we tried to really not let a threat stop us from continuing to work, but it is also possible that we could shut a building entirely. We don't do it very often, but it's usually the agency themselves that say, you know what, because of this threat, maybe we'll encourage our employees to telework that day and not be in the building. So we work with the agency leadership to determine exactly what the appropriate response should be based upon how serious we think the threat is.
Connor?
Do you know if, and you might not know, this might be more human resources, if there is a real or maybe a perceived threat and state employees don't feel comfortable remaining in their workplace there, are they generally required to use their personal or, vacation leave if they want to exit? Might be better for you, Commissioner.
Well, yeah, I think,
I know it used to be the case.
I think that it is, so BGS will do the analysis and we can make recommendations and then they will take action. I think the general practice today is if you're in the office and that happens, you have the opportunity to telework. You leave and you continue to telework. I think there was a point in time before teleworking. It's like, what do you do in that scenario? Do they send them home?
Right.
Because at that point in time, it's about safety. They may be safer being in the office. It really depends on what the situation is, but I think there's a lot more flexibility today and it's the situation. We have, HR, I don't think, it's really the department. It's not HR saying, oh, they need to do this. It's the situation and you have to look at it holistically.
We believe in a lot of intelligence sharing. So we have a meeting every month with the safety and security folks within the Capitol complex. And that'll be everybody from my office to the Capitol Police to the DMV enforcement officers to the governor's protection detail, the local Montpelier police, even the Washington County Sheriff participates sometimes. So we'll get together once a month and discuss like events on the lawn, things to be concerned about. Sometimes Rob Shell, who I think you're going to hear from later on, Rob will explain, hey, we had a threat at the courthouse or the Supreme Court, but sometimes the person who's making the threat isn't smart enough to distinguish between which building they should go to. So just because they made a threat at the courthouse doesn't mean that other people may not be shouldn't be concerned because they just might go to the wrong building, right? So we want to talk to each other and make sure that we all know about potential threats and we share information. So we have that meeting once a month. Then there's this group called the VITAT, and that's something relatively new where there is my threat investigations team, but we also have from DCF, from the Agency of Human Services, Department of Children and Families, they have their own people because obviously when you're taking people's children away or potentially, nobody likes that, right? So there's threats all the time. So they have their own threat people, as well as the Department of Corrections has their own threat people. So we get together once a month and talk about threats just among ourselves, and Rob's part of that too, and what we should know, and we try to keep each other posted on threats to among the different agencies. We work jointly with the Vermont Intelligence Center, which is really a branch of the Vermont State Police, and I also participate in a monthly meeting with the Joint Safety and Health Committee, which is the one where there's both union representation and state employees and managers on there. So that's a once a month meeting. And I try to provide whatever assistance I can to that committee. And I'll tell you, as an example, even though this doesn't necessarily fall under BGS safety and security, but some employees said, we don't have the right chairs in the DOC facilities. We don't like our chairs, and we've been trying to work with DOC to see if we can get better chairs. And I see that BGS has surplus. So then we put something out just the other day that they had access to 1,500 different, or maybe it was 800 chairs that the federal government was getting rid of. And I brought that information to the union's health and safety committee that maybe we can get some chairs. So I think we put a lot of people together with this information sharing, and that's helpful. We also provide training. Threat mitigation provides training in de-escalation, active threat familiarization, and also a variety of custom trainings. We probably did 35 de-escalation trainings within the last year or so, and I've done dozens. I tried to find the actual number, but let's say 50 active threat trainings. We don't do a true active shooter bail out of the building kind of thing, but I talk about it. And I have to say that for such a difficult subject, it's actually fun for the employees. I mean, they really understand like what is going on. It's an enjoyable training, even though it's an awful subject. So I provide those trainings a lot. I get a lot of very positive feedback from it, and happy to do one for you sometime if you'd like.
Madam Chair, if I may, and I just looking at the time, we'll try to move quickly, but I just wanted to go back to the incidents and hone in on that a little bit. So as Bill mentioned, you know, about 70 threats. So that's the scenario where he and his team are evaluating and in partnership as necessary with other, you know, intelligence groups to evaluate the threat. The other, you know, the 1,000 incidents, that can be a really big range of issues that got reported to us that his team then evaluates. And so those, I just want to be clear, those aren't all threats, right? That 1,000 number can feel, that's a big number.
It could be anything from an open door.
It could be a trip and fall. It could be an open door. It could just be, these are just issues that are reported to us that his team then evaluates and responds to as necessary. So just being clear, the variety of incidents that come into his work.
We have about 70 buildings with cameras in them. Altogether, we have over 1,000 video cameras in different buildings. So sometimes we get requests from both law enforcement and DHR to review cameras for, you know, to help actually solve a crime or investigate a crime. So we try to help those folks, but we use our cameras a lot to in our own investigations regarding safety and security when people fall, or I got to tell you, some medical events. It's really great to be able to look at the video cameras and see like what happened, what was the purpose of this person falling? What is there anything we could do to fix it? So the next slide is security systems.
We have a question here.
Yeah, just we deal with it in corrections a lot, Bill. Is there an active monitoring component to these cameras here where, like, for example, I have state employees in Montpelier who are, you know, they're nervous to get to their cars at night if it's dark or something. Is there cameras on like some of these parking lots, like at the end of the day that somebody's actively monitoring?
Every camera is actively recording. It's on like a motion sensor. So like, as long as there's movement, the camera's recording. We typically look at cameras once there's a reason to, but we do continue to monitor events. So if there's an event on the State House lawn, we'll monitor those cameras. Sometimes, like not uncommon, there's maybe a threat at the Vermont Psychiatric Hospital in Berlin. So we'll go and monitor in real time cameras in the parking lot there because maybe they got a call or something.
We do not have someone sitting at a desk after hours or at that time monitoring specific,
Okay.
That's what you're saying.
Yep.
You know, so we have all of these cameras. We can see many things. I mean, if you came over to security, you'll see the cameras are up, you'll see the snapshot. So we're seeing things, but I think you know, like if I'm leaving 120 State Street and walking out into the parking lot, is someone at that point in time watching the employees exit? They may be, but it's not a part of our daily business.
Okay.
But to Bill's point, our security cameras that are recording are used, that data is used. It is helped to inform local police, us when we're researching. I was a commissioner of DMV and I'm not exaggerating. I think I had 3 vehicles hit by people taking their driving test. So Bill thought I moved my parking spot. But I had driveaways, right? So they're used, but from that standpoint, no, we're not sitting
No.
monitoring every state building as people come in and exit.
No, I mean.
That would be a work for, I don't know how you would do
Right.
that.
But if there is a security concern at any given building, then I'll have some people like watch it for a little while. But one other thing that we've been doing lately is we've been putting some monitors so that employees upon leaving a building could get a view of their own parking lot. In Hartford particularly, there was some security concerns and employees that were very concerned. So we put up a big monitor about this size. It's got 6 or 8 different views of the parking lot, so they have an awareness of about what they're about to go into. So they could monitor it, but we're not necessarily monitoring it.
Sorry.
That's right.
I'll add on this slide, before you move on, Bill, just about all of the other systems, not just cameras, but, the badge readers, which we all use to get in and out of, locations. There's, panic buttons, intrusion alarms, et cetera. So Bill and his team work, on the programming side with the tenants of state buildings for what their security concerns and needs are. And then we'll work with them to install those systems as appropriate.
Yeah, we do have, not only cameras, panic buttons, lockdown buttons where somebody can hit a big red mushroom kind of button and lock all the doors. If there's some drama happening outside, we don't want to have it spill into the building. You could just lock all the doors. We have intrusion alarms, like we have panic buttons. We have a client service model. So when different client-facing agencies are meeting with folks, we shouldn't pull those people into our secure space. Let's have a space specifically designed where we can meet with the public, but if there's drama that occurs, it's happening in a separate area, not within the interior of the building. So that's called the client service model. We even have like bank teller style windows that we've been installing, and that gives some security to the people that are, working on the other side of the window. I just put a little array, for example, of some of the cameras that we have within the Capitol complex, and you could see that that's the kind of view that we have. We have a team of 3 technicians that are constantly updating our security systems, and it's a lot. We work them hard.
Madam Chair, I just want to say, I think it's really important for the committee to understand, there's so much, like even when you look at the slide that you don't see or you're not aware. And remember, in state government, we are sensitive. We have individuals that work alone. A great example is our information centers. We have individuals that are in places or positions that they need to have immediate access. And I'm going to use DMV. So not only do we have cameras, we have panic buttons. We are giving tools to the employees because you can't be there for every incident. And that's where I think the systems are so important. There's panic buttons, there's cameras, there's multiple ways of communicating. And the goal is prevention. And the goal is safety and protecting those employees. And that is still the heart. The security systems are about that. It's about monitoring. It's about protection. It's not about watching what they're doing because you can't be every place all of the time.
Right.
How long do you retain the camera footage?
We have big servers, and new footage is placed on the server, every time there's movement. It really depends upon the size of the server and how much activity, but generally 3 months.
3 months. Thanks.
And then sometimes it's funny, you say 3 months, and that sounds like a long time, and then I'll get a call from somebody that says 6 months ago something happened, and can't we please see if there's a way? And there's been times, no kidding, where if we didn't pull the video off like right then, it would have been gone at the end of the day. So we try to serve as much or preserve as much video as we can, but it's expensive to do that. We have an environmental and occupational safety team. These folks used to be with BGS operations and maintenance, but we understood that when it's really safe and security, it's more effective and efficient to have them on our team. So our safety officer, environmental, It smells, mold, brins, we used to call them, building related incidents. So that's what that person will do. The occupational safety person, I will tell you, we've changed the nature of their job. Every single time there's a slip and fall or some accident, I send Jason Rudy out to that place and I want to know exactly why that person fell down. Is it bad lighting? Is it something slippery on the stairs? Do we need more salt because it's winter? And sometimes like it's more serious. We had someone got their hand caught in the door that was shutting, and we were trying to determine, is it a person who just happened to put their hand in the wrong spot, or was the door malfunctioning? So this person really works well with our team, and they do site inspections all the time just to make sure we're all safe.
And this service doesn't go just to employees. When we have customers, the public entering our buildings and there are incidences, those are also evaluated.
No, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Because if a person gets hurt, I mean, yes, whether it's a state employee or a visitor, which is worse? Is one better than the other? Right? We got to make sure everybody's safe. So that's a big thing that we're doing. This particular unit also does COOP, our continuity of operations planning. We're trying to get some new COOP software this year just to make it easier to determine, what happens if I can't be in my building, or what happens if my office leadership is no longer available. How do we have orders of succession, that kind of thing. We also have the State Emergency Operations Center. So BGS provides points of contact and seats at the table at the SCOC, and this particular supervisor makes sure that it's properly staffed with BGS folks. And they also work with the Americans with Disabilities Act to make sure that we give people reasonable accommodations. And we have a great relationship with UVM where they give us some interns and we try to use them. So a couple other things. One thing that it maybe sound a little silly, but I'm really proud of that black and white photo. What that is it's a river gauge. And when we had our flooding the last 2 Julys, you couldn't see that river gauge because the water was all the way up to the bridge. So what we do is we go on a Teams meeting and I share my screen, which is that camera. And I invite, sometimes it seems like I invite half a state government to it. And anybody who's in leadership could view in real time how fast the water is rising. So we know we can make better informed decisions. So I know it's just a picture and it's grainy of a bridge, but I'm really, really proud of that because when the SEOC says thank you so much, now we can make better decisions and knowing exactly what the water's about. It's important.
But I think what's important is the way you set it up is that you can go into the Teams meeting at any time and monitor it. So it's not a scheduled meeting. The way Bill sends it out, it's oh, I want to go see the river, and he clicks it on, and I had to learn how to use it too, Madam Chair. So, yes.
So that baby right there is one of our employees' children. And what we do is we have an Infants in the Workplace program. So if your child is between 6 weeks and 6 months old, we go in and make sure that the workplace is safe. We update the EPP plan. So all those people that have been trained also know that there's a infant in the workplace and what should we do in case, the infant's involved. But we give them tiny infant headphones so that they protect their ears. So I wanted to make sure, we try to think of a lot of things. So it's not just buildings, certainly, and it's not even just people. It's getting headphones for infants. I mean, that's how granular we are sometimes getting stuff done. Yes, sir.
I know we're getting short on time, but is it safe to make the assumption that there's a tremendous amount of efficiency and effectiveness and coordination with BGS operating and managing its own safety and,
Absolutely.
systems? And
Absolutely.
it seems to me that is pretty well documented here.
It's one-stop shopping. And when you come to me with a problem, I'm able to find a solution for you. And because I could go to my deputy director and I can go to deputy commissioner. I want to go to
You'll
my
get it right.
commissioner. I'll get it right at some point. But I could go to these folks and they could say, you know what? This is really a BGS operations and maintenance thing, or this is really having to do with contracting. And so we could get these things done so much more easily because we're all under the same roof.
Well, I'd add too, we know our buildings and facilities best. We're intimately familiar with them. We have, a range of functions within our department, like Director McSallis was just saying, he can coordinate, perhaps with the operations and maintenance team, just thinking about flood recovery, like deploying sandbags, like all of those things, having them connected is very efficient. And I think cost effective for us to be combining those functions in one place.
The last major thing I just wanted to tell you about was SOV Alert. So we had a system called VT Alert, and many of you are probably familiar with it because you get traffic alerts and things like that. Well, there were certain dispatchers, people that were granted authority to send VT Alert out, and we found that the system was being maybe overused. There was alarm fatigue where there was just so many alerts that you're getting. Sometimes not only traffic things, but like there's cake in the break room on the 4th floor. You got a VT alert for it. So what we said is we're going to come up with our own parallel system, but we want you to trust us. So every message is going to look like this with our icon there, but we're only going to send out messages when it's really important. And there's no cake in the break room and there's no traffic delays. We're only going to send stuff out that's truly important. And we try to make sure that we send those messages out like as quickly as we can. The system is not perfect because we have limited people and sometimes our own people are teleworking or other places, but we've been very successful getting out critical information to people in a timely way through the SOV alert system. And we're continuing to make improvements to it. One of the things that I'll bring to your attention is it says on there visitor screening. So if you look, I define what's visitor screening. It's because we've had people that said, I don't know what that means. So we say, well, visitor screening means exterior doors without badge readers should be manually locked. And here's visitors with scheduled appointments may be allowed to enter. So we also say, like, whenever we give you a status update, we provide you with additional information. So we have a variety of different messages that we could send out, but we try to make them as informative as we can without also overburdening you. So folks, I could probably talk for another hour. I love this stuff. I love my job, but I know that you have other things to do, and I'm happy to address any other specific questions if you have them.
So for the bill itself, the responsibility for security right now for our state buildings is with BGS. And what the bill would do is eliminate that and shift it to a Vermont State Building Security Board. So a board would be responsible for ensuring the security, developing the plan, and be responsible for the protection of our state facilities. So I just want to put that in context in terms of what the bill is asking for.
And so, Madam Chair, I worked with you when we created the language on security. It started in this committee. I think that today, as the Deputy Commissioner articulated, you can see how the program has grown. We invest in it. We take it very serious. Without getting into details, we absolutely, as the Deputy Commissioner said, we are here to listen to you. If there's something we're not aware of and we can change, we will. The bill in general, we do not see value in the bill, and we cannot totally understand what you are trying to accomplish, because I think we are providing much more service than what the bill does, and we do day-to-day interaction throughout the state with partners, with employees, with local municipalities, depending on what the event is.
I even think with this briefing, I was going very, very quickly, and we could probably delve into any one of these slides and I could talk for 20 more minutes. There's a lot that we do.
So the bill changes all of this responsibility
Yes.
and moves it to a board. It eliminates BGS and moves it to a of Vermont State Building Security Board. And it also, that board will also develop and implement a comprehensive plan to ensure security for for judiciary employees, and also look at the judiciary as well. So that's what the bill does. And we can have further conversations about that. Now that you've had this testimony, and see if you want to shift all of that's happening within BGS would be shifted to this board. That's what the bill does for that. So I want to move on. I'd like to work to about 12:15, if we could, because we started, we'll give some time to judiciary. For your security, I know this is key work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
To schedule you folks back in, we can, but I would just at least like to give you some time to.
Commissioner, I think you need to send Bill to court so that he can learn some enthusiasm.
Well, we can work on it now, sir.
I also, thank you very much for having us. We have a bunch of cards that I give out that just show what we do. And I'm gonna leave them with some of your members and you can hand them, take a look.
Great, thank you.
Thanks so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.
So Terry, welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Terry Corson, State Court Administrator. It's like Groundhog Day. I feel like but it's my lucky week. I get to be every day. It's on different matters. And I know that brief amount of time. So what I'm going to do is try to summarize what we were going to present. And certainly we're happy to come back if there are additional questions. But as you pointed out, in terms of the bill at issue, not only does it seek to remove BGS from the security equation for state courthouses, it seeks to remove the Vermont Supreme Court, which now has the constitutional and statutory authority, responsibility for courthouse security for all courthouses. It seeks to remove that, take the Supreme Court out of the equation and have this board assume responsibility. In my view, that would not only, that would be a step backwards that I feel would harm the security processes that are in place now. Bill McSallis explained what the very, in my mind too, and I agree, it's very comprehensive and detailed attention to security details. To give you some context in terms of how the courthouses play into that, we've talked about in the other testimony that there are 23 state courthouses, 12 of which are county courthouses and 11 of which are state courthouses. So the 11 state courthouses, are the buildings that Bill referred to. And of those 11 state courthouses, 6 are strictly courthouse operations, 5 are shared, where there are courthouse operations and there might be a state's attorney's office, probation pro office, et cetera. But that's kind of the overall view. Again, under the Vermont Constitution, the Vermont Supreme Court has jurisdiction over security in courthouses. And there are numerous statutes. I got a memo here that kind of spells that out in terms of the constitutional and statutory authority that's vested in the Vermont Supreme Court that this bill proposes to take away from the Vermont Supreme Court. And in my view, it's vested in the Vermont Supreme Court very logically and understandably. The Vermont Supreme Court has complete and thorough understanding of court operations and the security threats and risks and circumstances that are unique to courthouses, that the Supreme Court would be in the best position to be aware of and has historically been responsible for. And I'm passing out as well, as recently as December of 2023, the legislature asked the judiciary to provide an overview of courthouse security measures. It was from a staffing perspective. It particularly pertained to the number of sheriff deputies that would be needed to adequately man courthouses. So, but this S-17 report was a very collaborative and comprehensive effort between the judiciary, between the Sheriff's Association, between VSEA, between all stakeholders involved with court users and their security in courthouses. And it shows a lot of the processes and the security measures that are currently in place in the courthouses. I have the Director of Judiciary Security, Robert Shell, here, who could answer whatever questions you have about the monitoring. My understanding is the monitoring, in response to your question, Representative Connors, is that it is continual monitoring.
It is. Robert Shell, I'm Security and Safety Director for the record, for the judiciary. We have 24/7 monitoring on cameras. They are not monitored by a security person, typically during the business days, but are often assigned security personnel when we have higher risk events.
Well, in the courthouses themselves, though, can you describe the monitoring and what personnel are looking at in terms of monitors at the screening desk, for
Yes,
example?
similar to what Bill had voiced, we have court security systems, cameras that record public facing areas within our courthouse footprint. So that includes the courtrooms as well as any areas where the public may assemble within the building as well as externally. So we have a security footprint comprehensively at all court buildings.
And you also have the digitization of that camera system. And I know in the Supreme Court building, there are cameras that are played on all the courthouses around the state.
Yes, we have, this is a digital system that also has a centralized monitoring point here at the Supreme Court, where we look at incidents similar to what Director McSallis had spoken to. When incidents do occur, we often dial in, monitor those locations for more specific security.
And just an overview in terms of the security personnel, historically, it's been sheriffs and sheriff deputies who provided courthouse security around the state. And that was the sole source, and that was the sufficient source for many years. There was a shift at the Costello Courthouse in Burlington where state court security personnel were used because of the inability of the sheriff's office to cover the courthouse. There were 2 other counties where, again, there wasn't enough sheriff personnel to cover the courthouses, and that's where a private Securitas was involved. And then additional state court employees who are specially trained for courthouse duty. One of the recommendations in the S-17 report, in recognition of the fact that we don't have enough sheriffs, and in my mind, the sheriff deputy is the ideal for the county sheriff. But there were some counties that were just enough personnel available, especially during the time when they had challenges with recruitment. My understanding is that that's improved, thankfully. But there are still courthouses where it's a combination of sheriff deputies and either private security or court security officers. But one of the recommendations in the S-17 report in recognition of that workplace reality was to have a new classified position, safety and security officer, which is a security personnel who's trained specifically to be in the courtroom and to be able to handle. We have a security officer in every criminal court hearing and every family court hearing. And then if it's a civil court hearing or a probate court hearing where the circumstances warrant it, we cover that as well. These safety and security officers were recommended, and we were very grateful to the legislature for approving positions allowed to have especially trained courthouse personnel. And Rob, through his central direction, can assign them to courthouses where a need arises, even hour to hour. He might have a security officer, he might be the screening officer, and every courthouse in the state has a screening officer at the door to prevent weaponry from entering the courthouse. In our mind, that's the most important way and most effective way to prevent weapons from entering the courthouse and reducing injury that way. So say a screening officer calls in sick at the last minute, Rob can assign one of the safety and security officers, make arrangements with the sheriffs to make sure that there's law enforcement presence. We don't have to close the courthouse. We don't have to cancel a court hearing. So it's been an incredibly flexible and effective way to ensure continual coverage. So it's a combination of the sheriff's deputies, private security, and these court security officers working in tandem in the state courthouses with Bill's team to ensure security to the highest level, including all these modern methods that Bill has kind of spelled out. It's also repeated in the memo here, but just to give you an idea, because as you wouldn't have any reason to necessarily be aware of that, but it's something that the Supreme Court takes very seriously. And I feel Rob and his role with his team, they are completely dedicated to those security threats and circumstances that are unique to courthouse settings. We have litigants who are in custody. We have holding cells. We have sally ports. It's all designed to ensure the safety and security of judicial officers, court staff, court users, the litigants. And it's a constantly evolving and constantly adapting process. And you've seen, you made mention of the different kind of examples that can arise. There was in the Rutland courtroom in the past couple of months, a person who had a drug overdose episode. The judge was made aware of it. The sheriff deputy came, administered Narcan. They can respond. They saw it on the cameras. In the courtroom. Another example, Representative Greer in Bennington. There was a person about to be placed into custody who bolted, who took off, and the court security officer in the courtroom, I don't know if you saw this, Bennington County Sheriff Department deputy, your jurisdiction as well. And the court officer responded immediately, tackled the person who's leaving the courtroom. The person was very aggressive, very volatile, and they had it under control within minutes. It was so impressive. You can watch it on the camera and you say, thank goodness that these people are so well trained to courtroom situations. So there are all these mechanisms in place. When I saw the bill, and we do have commentary regarding the bill, because the question is, what would be the purpose for this? Is there something that we're not aware of that somehow this would be advantageous? In my mind, this would represent a layer of bureaucracy and separation that to me would harm the security system that we have in place, with the Supreme Court having responsibility for security in Vermont courthouses. So we would oppose this bill and even question what would be the purpose, given all of the efforts and, in my mind, the success that's been occasioned by Rob and his team working in collaboration with Bill and his team in those courthouses that have the combined prisons.
And if it's required by the Constitution that the Supreme Court has the jurisdiction, the bill would be probably
I
unconstitutional.
think there are definite separation of powers issues that you're seeking to have an executive body assume responsibility for something that the Constitution has vested in the Supreme Court.
So we just took testimony from the sponsor of the bill, and committee members wanted a little bit more testimony to determine whether or not to work on the bill or not. So don't know if the committee wants to make a decision right now, or if you want to talk about it a little later on.
I would say no.
No.
I agree with Mary 100%.
I'd like to hear from the workers because it did originate there. So just to hear some of their concerns of maybe the genesis of this bill.
Fine.
Yeah.
You're asking our opinion on whether or not we should
Continue.
I agree with Connor. I think we should at least hear out.
Yeah, I know VSCA is asked to come in and testify.
Yeah, but
And they,
it's rather clear, this is a bill that's gonna go nowhere.
they were here a little bit at the beginning of the testimony.
Like a question.
Yeah.
Harry, thanks so much for the report. I'm just looking through and it's really helpful already. But I noticed that there was the recommendation for sort of the reallocation of positions there called for 7 new deputy sheriffs to be thrown in there. Do you know if those were approved by the Appropriations Committee? I'm just thinking because that was one of our recommendations for the transport there, and we didn't get those deputy sheriffs in. So
Right, they took care of the vacancy. You're
talking deputy state's attorneys, I think.
No, I think it was
Deputy sheriffs.
Sheriffs.
Yeah.
Sheriffs went in, I think.
No, the vacancies.
To the vacancies.
Okay.
They
To
took care
fill
of
up-
the
But we asked for
vacancies.
more transport
Right, we didn't get
deputy
that.
sheriffs, and we didn't get that.
We didn't get that, but they.
Right, so we wouldn't have been able to, for example, ask for more sheriff positions per se, because what we do, and actually it's Greg Mosley at Finance Administration, contracts with each of the county sheriff departments to provide the coverage that's needed for the court hearings and the court operations. So they kind of then determine in terms of the number of sheriffs. We were asked in terms of the S-17 directive to provide that information. So that's what we provided, but it wouldn't have been to say, give us X number of more sheriff positions, because it's within each county sheriff department that they have responsibility for the number of positions, for example.
Okay.
What we did, and what did result from it was with these safety and security officers, to be able to have coverage so that there's coverage throughout the courthouse. For the sheriffs, to me, they're critical because they're law enforcement. They have weapons, they have arresting authority. We have that at every screening station. And then depending upon the courthouse, they may be in the courtrooms as well. But if they're not, we have the safety and security officer who works with whatever law enforcement sheriff personnel is in the courthouse. And you can see there's a page in the report that it varies from county to county in terms of what that breakout is. Like in Rutland County, it's all sheriff deputies. They have enough to cover everything. But in other counties, it might be a combination. So it's kind of working hand in hand with the sheriff's offices. But these new safety and security officers fill in the gaps where we didn't have enough coverage. And if it's not, if we didn't have a sheriff deputy, at least we have this trained safety and security officer in the courtroom who's trained in de-escalation, who's trained in ways to maintain control in the courtroom until the sheriff can then get to the courtroom if it's a situation where we don't have one in every courtroom. So it's kind of a combination of making sure that there is the trained coverage. Ideally, we'd have a sheriff deputy in every courtroom at every screening spot as a rover. But we don't have the number of sheriff personnel, but between the private security, the court security officers and the sheriffs.
You feel covered?
Yes, and the S-17 exercise was a wonderful exercise. And actually, Rob and I went to every courthouse in the state, met with court staff, met with judges, met with the agencies who have a presence, who are court users, whether it's DCF, a probation and parole, Office of Child Support, anybody who comes in the courthouse to make sure their security needs are addressed. They were all involved in the S-17 report compilation. So I hope that in terms of court staff, they certainly would be familiar with that. And then they also have kind of between the court operations managers and the Superior Court clerks direct in the judicial assistants. Actually, I mean, you hear from them directly, depending on the nature of the situation. There's a direct kind of pipeline that this proposed board to me would just be such a separation of kind of, I don't know, connection. It would be a disadvantage. So as Bill said, it's kind of like when you know the buildings and each courthouse is unique as well. That makes it even all the more important to have an understanding and familiarity with, when you talk about this happened in that hallway, where that is, versus having to look at the blueprint and say, well, so we really do our best, but take it so seriously to make sure that everybody, including court staff, and we've also had situations where court staff, we say, there's this situation, there's this threat. And it's kind of all hands on deck to go there and try to figure out what's the best way to answer these concerns. So that's the goal.
Thank you.
Will, did you have something?
Terry, sorry, yeah. This, is this the original S-17 report that was
Yes.
given out? Okay, there's no additional information in here that I would reread.
I don't think so. And then I think the appendices are also, attached as well.
So thank you. We really appreciate it. Thank you,
Thanks very much.
BPS as well. We will schedule some time for state employees to be here. They did ask, requested that they could come in. We will schedule that for next week and then decide what we want to do with the bill.
And we'll watch and also make sure that if it's something we're not aware of, that we can make sure we can be responsive.
That'd be great.
And I'll also make sure, because we do monthly outreach and in-services to each of the courts if there are safety or security concerns, please let us know so that we can respond.
So when VSCA is scheduled to come in, we'll let you both, the judiciary and BPS, know.